When I returned from the first long vacation of my life, after giving the best years of myself to that office, I never expected they would try to throw me out the moment I came back. But they didn't know how important my work truly was, and they paid the price for it. Now I'll tell you how it happened. I knew something was wrong the moment the elevator doors slid open. After 2 weeks of salt on my skin and sun in my eyes, I expected the familiar morning blend of clattering keyboards, rushed footsteps, and the low rumble of early conversations. But as I stepped into the office, all I heard was the hollow hum of the air conditioner pushing stale, recycled air. The floor felt abandoned, as though everyone had evacuated minutes before I arrived and left only the machines running, their quiet buzzing echoing against the glass walls. I tried to brush off the unease. Maybe people were in a meeting? Maybe it was one of those rare, quiet mornings. But the corridor leading to my desk stretched empty, chairs neatly tucked in, monitors dark. No movement, no voices. And then I saw it. A note sat on my desk, perfectly folded, centered on the wood as if placed there with ceremonial precision. My name wasn't on it, no handwriting on the outside, just a thin square of paper waiting like a trap you almost notice too late. I hesitated. The air conditioner kicked on again, sending a cold draft across my back. Finally, I reached for the note and opened it. You may say goodbye to your colleagues and finish your useless work, then leave the company. No signature, no explanation. Just those words, cut sharp and clean, like someone had typed them without an ounce of hesitation. For a second, I almost laughed. It had to be a joke, maybe a badly executed prank from someone who thought office humor peaked at passive-aggressive notes. But the longer I stared at it, the less funny it looked. My name wasn't written anywhere, but the message might as well have been branded across the page. Leave. Leave, and don't come back. I set the note down and pressed the power button on my computer. Nothing happened. I pressed it again and again. The screen stayed black, giving me a dull reflection of my own confused expression. Then I noticed the small red light on the monitor, an indicator that the machine was locked remotely. I tried my keyboard. Dead. My mouse. Dead. A slow, icy trickle slid down my spine. I reached for my ID badge, slid it across the card reader beside my desk. The reader flashed red. Denied. I tried again. Same result. The system didn't just reject me, it refused to even recognize me. I stood there, gripping the useless badge, forcing myself to breathe. This had to be a mistake, a glitch, a systems error after the long weekend. It sometimes. But my thoughts froze as I noticed a shadow down the hallway. Someone turned the corner, saw me, and immediately looked away. Then another person walked past, eyes locking with mine for half a second before darting to the floor. A third made a wide arc around my desk, pretending to be deeply engrossed in whatever was on their phone. They avoided me. All of them. Not a single good morning. Not a single welcome back. Just stiff shoulders, averted gazes, and the unspoken agreement to pretend I wasn't standing right there. The note felt heavier now, like it carried more weight than paper should. I took a step toward Anna from accounting, someone I'd chatted with a dozen times over coffee breaks. She saw me coming, flinched almost imperceptibly, and quickly ducked into a nearby conference room, closing the door behind her as though I were contagious. "What the hell?" I whispered to myself. This wasn't normal. This wasn't a glitch. Something was happening. Still gripping my badge, I marched toward the nearest workstation, a junior analyst named Greg, always friendly, always eager to help. He looked up as I approached, the smile forming automatically before his brain processed who he was looking at. Then it vanished. He coughed awkwardly, gathered some files, and muttered something about needing to be somewhere. He left the second I stopped at his desk. That's when fear started to bloom inside me, quiet but persistent. I returned to my desk and picked up the note again, scrutinizing the letters, the phrasing, the sterile threat of it, the cold dismissal. I traced the words with my eyes, searching for any hint of familiarity, someone's tone, someone's style, but it was generic enough to be from anyone. I sat down, though the chair felt different now, like it belonged to a stranger. My fingers tapped the desk aimlessly as I tried to make sense of what was happening. Why would someone want me gone? I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't broken a rule. Then a darker thought crept in, slow and unwelcome. What if this wasn't about what I did wrong, but about what I did right? I swallowed hard. The last thing I had worked on before my vacation flashed in my mind. Those late nights reviewing financial reports, the irregularities I had found, the confrontation I'd tried to initiate, the uncomfortable silence that followed, the case that HR promised to handle internally. Was this connected? I pushed the thought aside. It felt too dramatic, too conspiratorial. Yet the silence around me, the locked computer, the dead badge, none of it felt like an accident. I looked around at the empty office again. Someone wanted me gone. But who? And more importantly, why today? Why now? Why like this? As I sat there in the cold hum of artificial air, surrounded by empty desks and turned backs, one thing became painfully clear. My return from vacation wasn't a return at all. It was an exit someone had carefully planned for me, and I had walked right into it. The walk to Marcus's office felt longer than usual, as if every step dragged me deeper into something thick and invisible, like a fog I couldn't push through. Normally, his door was open by this hour. A half-empty cup of black coffee sitting on the corner of his desk, spreadsheets scattered in their usual chaotic order. He was the type who believed in open-door leadership, insisting transparency made a team stronger. But this morning, the door was shut. Not just shut, locked. I tried the handle twice, then knocked. Once, twice, 5 times, nothing. Not even a rustle of movement inside. The blinds were drawn tightly, blocking any view into the office that was usually so exposed. The small nameplate on the door, Marcus Ellison, department manager, glistened under the fluorescent lights, but the space behind it felt dead. "Marcus?" I called quietly. "It's Emily. I need to ask you about—" Silence. A lump formed in my throat. I turned and spotted an HR assistant passing by, a woman whose name I never fully learned. Our interactions had always been polite nods and short greetings. Today, she hesitated mid-step when she saw me, eyes widening slightly before her expression smoothed into something carefully neutral. "Excuse me," I said, moving toward her. "Do you know where Marcus is? His office is locked." She blinked too many times. "He isn't in yet. At 9:30? That's unusual. I'm sure he'll be available later." Her tone was brittle, rehearsed, as if she'd been warned to expect me. "Is there something I can help you with?" "Yes," I said firmly. Someone left a note on my desk telling me to finish my useless work and leave. My computer access is locked. My badge doesn't work. I need HR to clear this up. Her forced politeness cracked. "Please go to HR. They'll look into it." I caught the subtle shift in her eyes. Relief. Relief that she wasn't the one who had to deal with me. Relief that she could pass me on like a problem too hot to hold. She scurried away before I could say another word. The HR department sat at the far end of the floor, a cluster of glass-walled rooms that always smelled faintly of printer toner and vanilla hand sanitizer. When I stepped inside, I saw Helen Brooks, the recently hired HR director, emerge from her office. She spotted me instantly. Her smile was thin, too thin. "Emily," she said in a tone that pretended familiarity. "Welcome back." I held up the note. "Do you know anything about this?" Her eyes flicked to the paper, then quickly back to me. A tiny delay. Enough for me to see something tighten in her jaw. "We received some instructions regarding your access," she said carefully. "There may have been a system error or perhaps a misunderstanding. My badge doesn't work. My computer doesn't work. Everyone is avoiding me. That isn't a misunderstanding." Helen pressed her lips together as if weighing how much she was allowed to say. "As I said, we're looking into the issue." I stared at her. "Do you really expect me to believe this is a coincidence?" "It's not my place to discuss internal matters until they are officially documented," she replied, folding her hands neatly, as if she'd practiced this pose in the mirror. My frustration flared. "Then document it. Right now. Or call Marcus." She hesitated, again, and that hesitation told me more than her words ever could. "Marcus is unavailable today," she said. "Please be patient. I assure you there is a process." A process. A word that means nothing when used by someone who wants you shut out. Someone in this building had pulled strings. Someone with authority. Someone who had made sure every door I tried would lock just before I reached it. "Emily," Helen said softly, "it may be best if you take some time away from the office while we sort things out." There it was. The gentle push out the door. The attempt to make me feel like leaving was the reasonable choice, the calm choice, the choice of someone who didn't want to cause trouble. But I saw the truth in her eyes. She expected me to vanish. Quietly, obediently. "No," I said. "I'm staying until someone gives me answers." Her smile returned, strained and insincere. "That isn't advisable." I turned and walked out before she could finish the sentence. The moment I stepped back into the hallway, I saw two people at the end of the corridor abruptly pivot and walk the other way. Someone else ducked into a supply closet. Another pretended to make a phone call with a dead screen. It felt surreal, like I had become a ghost haunting the place where I used to belong. I reached my office area again, but there was movement this time. A man I didn't recognize was rifling through my cabinet, pulling out binders, tossing them into a cardboard box without even checking labels. "Excuse me," I snapped, marching toward him. "What are you doing?" He barely looked up. "I was told to clear this out." "Told by who?" "Work order from management." He shrugged and continued emptying the shelves with mechanical indifference. "This is my workspace. Not my problem." A surge of panic shot through me. Watching him box up my things felt like watching someone dismantle my identity piece by piece. I grabbed one of the binders he reached for. "These are confidential files. You can't just—" He yanked it back. "Ma'am, if you cause trouble, I'll have to call security." Security. The word hit me like a blunt object. They were preparing to throw me out. They were acting as if I were already gone. Fear coiled in my gut, sharp and cold, but behind it, a different feeling stirred. Suspicion. Someone wanted me removed quickly and quietly. Someone had given explicit orders. Someone was hiding behind locked doors and vague phrases. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional. I stood there, surrounded by the half-emptied shell of what used to be my workspace, and realized something I'd been trying not to admit. I wasn't being ignored. I was being erased. And if they were trying this hard to silence me, then whatever they were afraid of was much bigger than I'd guessed. I didn't go back to my desk right away. I needed air, or at least the illusion of it, so I headed toward IT. The corridor felt narrower than usual, each step accompanied by the sensation of unseen eyes tracking me from behind half-closed blinds and glass reflections. No one spoke. No one even breathed loudly. The silence followed me like a shadow. The IT room was on the north side of the floor, behind two security doors normally wide open. Today, only one was ajar. When I pushed it, the hinges let out a small metallic groan. Inside, the usual clatter of keyboards was muted, as if even the machines were afraid to draw attention. Charlie, the closest thing we had to a company tech wizard, was hunched over a monitor. His curly hair stuck out in every direction like he had been pulling at it all morning. When he saw me, color drained from his face so quickly it could have been a magic trick. "Emily," he said, his voice cracking, you're here." "Unfortunately," I replied, stepping inside. "My access is frozen. Computer, email, badge, everything. Can you check what's going on?" He looked around the room nervously, as if expecting someone to burst in and stop him. I don't know if I should." My patience was thinning. "Charlie, please." He exhaled shakily and swiveled toward his keyboard. His fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly before they finally started typing. "What's your username again?" "E. Carter." He typed it in. The system whirred, a soft pulse of digital life, then stopped abruptly. Charlie frowned. He tried again, accessing a different menu. Another error. Then he tried a third path, one I knew only administrators were allowed to use. This time, the system opened a small window. His eyes widened. "What?" I demanded. Charlie's voice dropped to a whisper. Someone manually disabled your entire profile." My stomach tightened. Disabled? Yes. Not suspended. Not locked for security. Disabled, as in removed from active employee status. That's impossible. I leaned in. I'm still employed. No one informed me otherwise. Charlie swallowed hard. "I wasn't supposed to see this." "Who gave the instruction?" "I can't." "Charlie." He hesitated, torn between fear and whatever loyalty he still had. Finally, he clicked into the command log, glancing around again as if the act alone would set off alarms. A line of text appeared. "Access change requested. Authorized by H. Brooks, Helen." Helen Brooks, the HR director who had smiled at me with that glue-thin expression of manufactured sympathy. Helen, who had tried to gently push me out the door. Helen, who didn't want me near any department processes. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Charlie," I said slowly. "Did she give a reason?" He shook his head. "Just a classification tag." "What tag?" His voice barely rose above a breath. "Internal risk." I froze. Internal risk? Like I was a virus, a threat. Something to quarantine, isolate, and erase from the system, all without telling me. I stepped back, steadying myself against the server rack. Charlie looked like he expected me to collapse. I almost did. "Hold on," he said. "There's more." He clicked another menu, the access history for my email. A list appeared, filled with timestamps. Most were expected. Automatic backups, nightly syncs. But then one entry stood out like a bruise. "Login attempt. Authorized override. June 29th, 02:11 a.m., late at night. The day before my vacation." I narrowed my eyes. "Charlie, what was accessed?" He shook his head helplessly. "The system doesn't show the contents. Only that someone used admin privileges to enter your inbox." My mind raced. June 29th. That was the week I had submitted the financial discrepancy report. The week I'd gathered spreadsheets, drafts, and notes, everything I intended to bring to Marcus for review. But the case disappeared quietly afterward, swallowed by HR in a folder labeled "Resolved Internally." Resolved? What a joke. Someone had broken into my account. Someone had erased something. Someone had made sure no digital trace remained while I was lying on a beach, blissfully unaware. "Charlie, can you restore my access?" I asked urgently. His hands flew up in surrender. "I can't. I'm under strict instruction, and if they find out I even opened your profile—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. Fear radiated off him in waves. "Okay," I said softly. "I understand." He looked at me with guilt pooling in his eyes. "Emily, you didn't hear this from me, but someone told it that anything related to you should stay locked. No exceptions." A chill settled into my bones. "Who said that?" "I don't know. The order came from above." He hesitated. "Higher than HR. Higher than HR. Higher than Marcus. Who was above them?" "Only one person. But I couldn't believe the CEO would involve himself in something like this. Richard Hale wasn't warm, exactly, but he was rational, practical, and rarely interfered with department-level issues. Unless someone lied to him. Unless someone made him believe I was a threat. Unless someone wanted me gone so badly that they reached upward instead of sideways. The walls felt tighter around me, the air thinner. My hands trembled as I thanked Charlie and walked out of IT. The hallway looked the same as it had minutes ago, but I felt different, like a veil had lifted and revealed the machinery working behind the silence. Back at my desk, my cabinet was now almost completely emptied. My files, my reports, even my office mug, gone, boxed up neatly by the stranger who no longer lingered. The cardboard sat on the floor like a quiet declaration. "You're finished here." I sank into my chair, forced to face a truth I didn't want to voice aloud. Someone was deliberately pushing me out. This wasn't incompetence or confusion or a clerical error. It was orchestrated, carefully, quietly, methodically. But the question that burned in my mind, scorching everything else, was the one I still couldn't answer. What did I do to deserve this? Or worse, what did I know? Walking back onto the floor felt like walking onto a stage where everyone had already memorized the script, except me. Heads dipped the moment I appeared, keyboards clicked faster, conversations ceased mid-sentence. People I had known for years suddenly found the floor, the ceiling, or invisible points on their screens incredibly interesting. Every step I took echoed in the quiet like a warning bell. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. Offices could be awkward. People could get nervous. But the tension thickening the air wasn't normal. It felt rehearsed, practiced, coordinated. I stopped beside Olivia's desk. She was always kind, always chatty, always first to show me pictures of her kids. Today she stared at her monitor so hard her pupils barely moved. "Olivia?" I asked. No reaction. "Hey," I tried again, softer. "Can we talk a second?" She clicked her mouse repeatedly, clearly not doing anything except pretending to. I'm really busy, Emily." Her voice was tight, brittle, not angry, frightened. "Just tell me if you know—" "I don't," she blurted. "I don't know anything, okay?" A lie. A desperate one. I stepped back. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath since I walked over. Next, I approached Daniel. He owed me, twice. I covered one of his deadlines last minute, and I helped him sort out a compliance mess earlier this year. If anyone would talk, it was him. He saw me coming and stood so abruptly his chair rolled back into the wall. "Daniel, can you just—" He shook his head violently. "I can't be involved in this." "Involved in what?" I demanded. He opened his mouth, but then something in his expression tightened like an inner door slamming shut. "Just leave it alone. Please." He walked away, leaving his laptop open and his coffee still steaming. The fear wasn't just mine anymore. It was theirs too. I moved farther down the aisle, forcing myself to keep going even as my pulse hammered against my ribs. My voice wavered as I spoke to a few more people. Melissa, Ian, Priya. Every response was the same. Averted eyes, rushed excuses, silent terror. It felt like I had become radioactive, like touching me, even speaking to me, would contaminate them. Finally, defeated and trembling, I went back to my half-empty workspace and sat down. I stared at the blank monitor, trying to ignore the growing sense of unreality. I wasn't imagining this. Someone had turned the entire office against me. But why? I reached for my phone, considering calling Marcus again, when I felt someone move behind me. A faint shift of air, the soft scuff of a shoe on carpet. I turned slowly. Michael stood there, pretending to read a file, his shoulders tense, eyes flicking at me from beneath lowered lashes. He was the last person I expected to see. Not because he disliked me, quite the opposite. We had worked closely for years, tackling more than a few crises together. If anyone might still speak to me, it was him. "Michael?" I whispered. He hesitated, then took a half step closer. Not enough to be seen, but enough for me to hear him. "Emily," he murmured without looking up. "You need to stop asking questions." That alone made my heart lurch. "Why? What's going on? Why is everyone acting like—" He raised a hand just slightly, signaling me to speak lower. "I shouldn't even be talking to you," he muttered. "They're watching everything." "Who is they?" He closed the folder, using it as a shield. He still didn't look directly at me. "It's because of what happened in June." My throat tightened. "The financial misconduct?" "Don't say it out loud," he warned sharply. I leaned in. "I thought that case was dismissed. HR said it was resolved." "Yeah, resolved." His tone dripped with bitterness. "Swept under the rug is more accurate. I reported a manager stealing company money. I did the right thing." "I know," he whispered. "But you weren't supposed to notice it. And once you did, a lot of people got very nervous. Very quickly." I felt heat rise in my chest. This whole thing, my badge, my computer, the note, this is retaliation. He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "But why now?" I asked. "Why go after me when months have passed?" "Because something changed," he said. "I don't know what exactly. Someone said a review was reopened or a document resurfaced. Whatever it was, your name came up again, and they panicked." My blood ran cold. But why won't anyone tell me anything? Why is everyone acting like I'm toxic? Michael swallowed hard. "Because they told us you're being investigated. That talking to you could implicate us." "Investigated for what?" I asked, incredulous. "I don't know." He finally looked at me, just a flicker of eye contact, but filled with fear. "Emily, listen to me. You need to be careful. You have no idea how deep this goes." My pulse quickened. "Michael, please. Who's behind this? Marcus? HR? Someone higher?" "I can't say," he whispered. "I really can't." "Then tell me if I'm in danger." He hesitated again, jaw tightening. "Not yet," he said finally. "But you will be if you keep digging." My breath hitched. "Why are you helping me?" he exhaled shakily. Because you didn't deserve this, and because you were right. Before I could say another word, he stepped back, opened the folder again, and walked off without looking at me. To anyone watching, it would appear he had delivered a file, nothing more. But I sat frozen, his words replaying in my mind. You were right. They're watching everything. You'll be in danger if you keep digging. The office around me continued its strange, stifling silence, but now it felt different. Before, I'd felt isolated. Now, I felt hunted. Someone had marked me. Someone had decided I was a threat, and whatever had happened in June, the misconduct I uncovered, the documents I saw, the report I filed, it wasn't as buried as they thought. They thought I was the only obstacle. And they were right. I didn't go home after Michael's warning. I couldn't. The idea of stepping outside the building, of losing sight of the place where all this was happening, made my skin crawl. If I left now, I wasn't sure I'd ever be allowed back in. And if someone really was trying to bury me, then disappearing quietly was exactly what they expected me to do. Instead, I found the quietest corner of the office, an old storage room no one used anymore, and slipped inside. The smell of dust and forgotten binders filled the small space. I sat down on a metal stool and forced myself to breathe. Slowly, deliberately. Think, Emily. What do you know? I had reported financial discrepancies in June, transactions that didn't add up, numbers that pointed to fraud, and a manager who panicked the moment I mentioned an audit. HR called it a misunderstanding. They sealed the case before it touched daylight. And now, this. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a small reminder that I still had some access left. I didn't dare connect to company Wi-Fi, so I opened my personal hotspot and logged into a private cloud account I rarely used. Then, almost instinctively, I checked something else. An old login I had created years ago for a backup server during a cross-department project. It should have been disabled long ago. But when I typed in my credentials, my breath caught. Access granted. A tiny thrill of fear and hope twisted in my stomach. If this door was still open, maybe others were too. The interface was outdated, clunky, and slow, but familiar. I navigated to the archived folders, the ones automatically generated from department backups. Most were empty. Most hadn't been touched in years, but one folder stood out. June Audit Review. My heartbeat quickened. I clicked. A list of files popped up, spreadsheets, emails, notes, all with timestamps from late June, but half of them were grayed out, deleted. My breath stopped. Deleted on June 29th. The same night someone broke into my email. I clicked the activity log, my hands trembling. Lines of entries scrolled across the screen. File opened, copied, deleted. The username field read, System Admin Override. Someone had wiped the evidence while I was packing sunscreen and swimsuits for my vacation. Someone had erased my work, my findings, my report. Someone had made sure the fraud trail vanished completely. But they missed something. I found a single file still intact, tucked away in a subfolder I barely remembered creating. A spreadsheet with a boring file name, Draft Tar Recon JAV3 XLSX. I opened it. Rows of transactions filled the screen. Transfers shuffled through obscure vendors, duplicate charges hidden under vague descriptions, and a pattern that formed the shape of a scheme. A sloppy one. One that someone had tried hard to bury. And the signature below one approval line, D. Lawson, David Lawson. The manager I had accused. The man everyone defended. The man who had shouted at me in a meeting room and told me I was misreading the data. The man HR protected. My hand shook as I scrolled. There was more. Expenses funneled through travel accounts, fake consultant invoices, all pointing back to David. But something else caught my eye, a secondary set of edits, different initials in the changelog. SG Sarah Green, his deputy. She had always been ambitious, too ambitious. She hovered around David constantly, absorbing his influence, copying his strategies. Everyone assumed she was grooming herself to take his position someday. Apparently, she was grooming herself for something else too. I scrolled further. A third name appeared, not in the spreadsheet, but in the metadata. H.B. Helen Brooks. Helen had signed off on a document not even in her department. Why would HR involve itself in financial approvals? Unless she was part of the cover-up. My pulse pounded so hard it echoed in my ears. They were all connected. David, Sarah, Helen. 3 names tied together through the digital fingerprints they thought they erased. A wave of nausea rolled through me. I closed the document and leaned back against the wall. The metal shelving behind me rattled with the impact. My breath stuttered. This wasn't just retaliation. This was self-preservation. A coordinated effort to bury something, someone, who might expose them. Me. I was the only obstacle. A faint noise echoed outside the storage room door. Footsteps. Someone passing by. I froze, holding my breath until they faded. When I looked down at the laptop again, unease tightened in my chest. The old server connection flickered. Its age made it unstable, unpredictable. I needed to preserve what I found, now, before it vanished too. I saved the spreadsheet to my cloud drive, then copied the entire folder. But as I clicked through subdirectories, another shock hit me. A second log file. Timestamps from the night before my vacation. For a moment, I thought it was another deletion history, until I opened it. Instead of erased files, the log showed failed deletion attempts. Someone had tried to wipe everything, but the connection had timed out halfway. The system stability had saved me. One entry repeated several times. Delete attempt failed. User, D. Lawson. David himself. He had personally tried to erase every trace of his misconduct. And when he couldn't, he turned to HR, to Sarah, to whoever else was willing to help. They weren't covering tracks anymore. They were eliminating threats. My hands grew cold. I had proof, not everything, but enough to terrify them. And that meant one thing. They wouldn't stop. Not until I was gone. A sudden vibration jolted me. The building intercom briefly crackled to life. A test sound. Maybe nothing. Or maybe they were looking for me. I shut the laptop, stuffed it under my arm, and slipped out of the storage room. The corridor stretched empty again, but the silence no longer felt like absence. It felt like surveillance. Someone was hiding evidence. Someone was erasing me. But they hadn't erased me completely. Not yet. And now I knew the truth. They were afraid. Afraid of what I might find. Afraid of what I remembered. Afraid of what I could still do. And that fear was my only advantage. The office felt different now. Not just silent, but hostile. Every passing glance carried meaning. Every whisper sounded like a warning. I kept my laptop tucked under my arm, fingers clenched so tightly around it that my knuckles ached. The evidence inside was fragile and incomplete, but it was mine. My lifeline. I found a quiet corner near the stairwell and leaned my back against the wall. For a moment, I pressed my eyes shut, willing my heartbeat to calm. They weren't just pushing me out, they were in a panic. And panicked people made mistakes. I opened my phone's notes app and began a new list. A list of suspects. a list of names that now formed the rotten core of this conspiracy. 1. David Lawson. The obvious one. The man who started it all. His signature on fraudulent approvals. His late-night attempts to delete evidence. His rage when I questioned him. Everyone feared him because he had friends in high places, or so he claimed. But someone like David didn't operate alone. His incompetence was loud, messy, visible. Someone cleaner had to be pulling strings. 2. Sarah Green, his deputy. Smart, meticulous, calculating. While David made noise, Sarah moved like smoke. Quiet, slipping into places unnoticed. She always hovered near conversations, always seemed to know things she shouldn't. And her initials in the changelog proved she wasn't just helping David. She was editing the trail. 3. Helen Brooks, the HR director who arrived conveniently 2 months before the June incident. Too polished, too eager to reorganize, too ready to shut me down. And she had authorized the disabling of my profile without hesitation. Her hands were nowhere near finance, yet her digital fingerprints were all over the cover-up. 4. Brian. A wild card. He wasn't powerful, but he knew things. He always hung around late, always volunteered to help on confidential tasks. He had the anxious look of someone holding secrets that weren't his, and recently, he couldn't look me in the eye at all. I stared at the list. 4 names, 4 possible motives. But not all of them hated me. Not all of them wanted me gone. And that's what unsettled me most. Someone was helping me. Twice now, I had found things I wasn't supposed to find. The old backup login still functioning. A file hidden in a forgotten subfolder. These weren't accidents. Someone inside the system had left breadcrumbs. Tiny openings I could slip through. Why? Did they want to expose the truth? Or did they want to use me to destroy someone else? I rubbed my temples, thinking. I needed more information, and none of the suspects would willingly give it. But I knew someone who might. Someone low enough to be scared, but close enough to the center to hear things. Brian. I found him near the break room, pretending to refill the coffee machine even though it wasn't running. He jumped when I entered. Brian, I said quietly. He froze. Emily, I can't talk to you. They said what? I stepped closer. That I'm dangerous? That I'm being investigated? That I'm a threat? His mouth twitched, guilt flickering behind his eyes. I don't know anything, he whispered, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. Yes, you do. I kept my tone low, controlled. And you know this isn't right. Look at me, Brian. Do I look like someone who deserves to be thrown out without explanation? He swallowed. His hands shook as he fumbled with a stack of plastic cups. You should leave, he muttered. And if I do? I asked. Will they stop? Or will someone else be next? That made him pause. I softened my voice. Brian, please, if you know anything at all, it could help me. He stared at the cups in his hands for a long moment. Then, without looking up, he whispered, You're on the wrong floor. I blinked. What? You're looking at the wrong people. His breathing quickened. Somebody above them wants this. Somebody who doesn't want their name anywhere. And they're scared of you. Scared you'll connect the dots. Who? I demanded. Give me a name. He shook his head violently. If I tell you, I'm finished. Brian. He shoved the cups into the cabinet and hurried past me, eyes glued to the floor. I watched him leave in a near run. The break room door swung shut behind him. His reaction told me everything. The rot went higher than I thought. I returned to my desk, my half-dismantled desk, hoping to find something left untouched. Instead, a chill swept through me. A small envelope sat on my chair. My name wasn't on it. No handwriting, no logo, just like the first note. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a single line, typed neatly. "Be careful who you trust." I stared at the words, a prickling sensation crawling up my spine. This wasn't from the conspirators. This wasn't a threat. It felt different, almost like a warning. A second message was tucked behind the first, a printed screenshot. I unfolded it slowly. It showed an internal system page, an access log, my name at the top, and below it, several attempts to open my profile from a restricted network. Failed. 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 Until one attempt succeeded. Authorized override. User. Unknown. My stomach dropped. Someone had been trying to see what I knew. Someone with high-level clearance. Someone whose identity the system couldn't or wouldn't display. Not David. Not Sarah. Not Helen. Not Brian. Someone above all of them. Someone I hadn't even considered. Footsteps approached in the hallway, snapping me out of my shock. I stuffed the warning back into the envelope and slipped it into my pocket. The footsteps faded, but the dread didn't. My list of suspects wasn't just short. It was incomplete. Whoever had helped delete files, disable my access, and isolate me wasn't acting alone. But whoever slipped me this warning, they were inside the system too. Close enough to intervene, close enough to watch. I sat in my chair and whispered to the empty room. Everyone is a suspect. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I understood something terrifying. This wasn't a battle between me and a few corrupt employees. This was a war inside the company, and I was standing in the crossfire. I couldn't stop replaying the last moments with Brian, the fear in his eyes, the tremor in his voice when he said I was looking at the wrong people. He wasn't lying. He was terrified. Terrified of a name he refused to speak. Terrified of being seen with me. Terrified of the walls closing in, and if he was that scared, then I should be too. But instead of fear, something else began to take root in me. Something sharper, something steadier. Determination. Whatever they were hiding, whatever they thought they could bury, I wasn't going to let them smother me quietly. I stepped into an empty conference room, closed the door, and sat down at the far end. The lights buzzed softly overhead. Too bright, too white. But the room at least felt private. Or as private as anything in this building could be. I pulled out the envelope with the warning and stared at it again. Be careful who you trust. The letters were clean, deliberate, printed in black ink. Not handwritten, meaning whoever left it didn't want their identity traced through pen strokes or handwriting analysis. Smart. A second anonymous message, which meant someone was watching. But unlike the people trying to erase me, this person wanted me alert, wanted me cautious, wanted me alive. But why? Before I could spiral into theories, my phone buzzed. A new email. I frowned. My professional account was locked. This had to be my personal one. The subject line made my chest tighten. Stop digging. No sender name. Just an address I didn't recognize. An encrypted string of letters and numbers that looked like it belonged to someone deliberately hiding behind layers of anonymity. With a deep breath, I opened it. The email was short. 8 words. Stop digging or you'll regret it. Below it, a single attachment. My hands trembled as I tapped it open. A photograph appeared. Me, sitting at my desk. Not today. My hair was longer in the picture. It was taken the day before my vacation. I remembered the outfit, the coffee mug, the shoulders tight with stress posture. I had been reviewing the financial data that night, double-checking the irregularities because they didn't sit right with me. In the photo, I was unaware, focused, vulnerable. Someone had been watching me long before this began. A cold wave washed over me. This wasn't just about access logs, deleted files, or office politics. This had been building for months. Someone had been observing my movements, tracking my work, waiting for the right moment. And that moment came when I left for vacation, when I was far away, unprotected, unable to defend myself. The email pinged again, a follow-up message. Same sender. Final warning. No attachment. Nothing else. I stood so quickly the chair scraped loudly across the floor. My heartbeat rang in my ears. Someone had my personal email. Someone had my photo. Someone was threatening me directly now, not through bureaucratic barriers or locked systems, but through intimidation. I paced the room, running a hand through my hair. There were two possibilities. The threat came from one of my suspects, David, Sarah, Helen. Someone close, someone panicking. The threat came from the person above them, the puppet master Brian hinted at. The second option scared me more, but it also fit too well. David was clumsy, Sarah careful, but not omniscient, Helen manipulative, but still new. None of them felt like someone who'd go this far. Not alone. I stopped pacing and stared at the conference room door. It was slightly ajar. I hadn't left it that way. A chill shot through my stomach. I pushed it open carefully and stepped into the hall. Empty. But the air felt different, as if someone had just walked away. I looked left. Nothing. Right. Nothing. Still, the hairs on my arms stood up. I wasn't imagining it. Someone had been there. Someone was close enough to hear me move, to walk away before I stepped out. My breathing quickened. I needed space. Movement. Somewhere they couldn't corner me. I headed toward the stairwell and walked down 2 flights. The lower floor was mostly unused, storage and old meeting rooms no one reserved anymore. Perfect. I slipped inside an abandoned office and shut the door behind me. Dust coated the long wooden table. Old chairs were stacked against the wall. But it was quiet. And for the first time today, I felt out of their reach. I sank onto a chair and took a deep breath. This was no longer about a missing file. This was about survival. Whoever sent that email wasn't just warning me, they were testing me, seeing if intimidation would work, seeing if I would back down like they expected. But the photo did the opposite. It ignited something in me, something no threat could extinguish. Anger. They wanted to scare me into silence. They wanted me gone. They wanted everything I knew erased. They were watching me, tracking me, treating me like a liability. If someone was monitoring me back in June, then they knew exactly what I found. They knew how close I came to exposing them. And now, they were afraid. People don't send threats unless they're desperate. I took out my notebook and rewrote my suspect list. This time, I added a new line. 5. Unknown. Highest level access. Nothing about this nightmare was random. Nothing was accidental. Someone with power, real power, was trying to make me disappear. But they made one critical mistake. They showed their hand too early. If they wanted me to stop digging, then digging was exactly what I was going to do. I closed my notebook, stood up, and whispered to the empty room. You want a war? Fine. My voice shook, but not from fear, from resolve. You just picked the wrong person to threaten. I didn't sleep that night. I barely blinked. Every time my eyes drifted shut, I saw that photo, the one taken the night before my vacation, the one proving someone had been watching me long before the first note appeared. Every shadow on my walls felt like a threat. every creak in the building like footsteps approaching my apartment door. By morning, exhaustion clung to my bones, but clarity sharpened my thoughts. If someone had gone through this much trouble to frame me, isolate me, and threaten me, they must have overlooked something. People always do when they panic, and panic was exactly what I intended to exploit. I returned to the office before most people arrived. The building was still half asleep, lights dimmed, corridors quiet enough to hear my own heartbeat. My badge didn't work. No surprise. But I'd anticipated that. I slipped in behind a group of early arriving interns who held the door open with sleepy, oblivious politeness. It felt risky, but necessity had pushed me past caring about rules. Once inside, I headed straight to the basement archives. Years ago, the company stored everything on paper: contracts, financial ledgers, internal memos, audit trails. Some had been digitized, but not all. The basement was where the forgotten things lived, and forgotten things, I had learned, could be useful. The hallway down there smelled faintly of dust and old toner. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead as though shivering from age. I approached the heavy metal door, heart pounding, half expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. Inside, rows of tall shelves stretched into dimness. Cardboard boxes lined the aisles, labeled by quarter and year. I scanned the signs until I found what I needed. Q2. Internal correspondence. I slid a box from the shelf, blowing a layer of dust into the air. My hands shook as I opened it. Stacks of folders sat inside, organized in messy layers. I sifted through them, not sure exactly what I hoped to find. Maybe something, anything, linking the people on my list. A memo, an email printout, a stamped form they forgot to shred. A small packet near the bottom caught my attention. It wasn't labeled like the others. Instead, it had a sticky note on top, the word "old" scribbled on it in fading ink. I pulled it out. Inside were printed emails, lots of them, thread after thread. They were exchanges between department leadership. At first, routine scheduling notices. Then things changed, tone sharpened, urgency seeped into the language, and certain names began appearing. Lawson, Green, Brooks. I felt my breath hitch. My eyes darted to a thread dated June 12th, 2 days before I submitted my discrepancy report. The subject line read, "Concerns Re, E. Carter's Review." I swallowed hard and read. She found it. "We need to neutralize this quickly before she escalates." Neutralize. A word that didn't belong in any professional context. Another email, this one from David Lawson. "If she goes to Marcus, he'll dig. We can't afford that. We need HR to delay her." HR Helen. Of course. A reply from Helen Brooks arrived minutes later. "Understood. I can intervene. I'll frame it as a standard review. Give me 48 hours. My stomach twisted. They had coordinated, planned, deliberately obstructed me. But the thread didn't end there. Another email from Sarah Green appeared below it. "We should consider removing her access entirely if she continues. I'll talk to Hale about potential restructuring." Hale? My eyes widened. The CEO. Richard Hale. The one person I believed wasn't involved. I skimmed through page after page until I found his name again. His reply was short. "Handle it internally. I don't want disruption." I sat back against the cold concrete wall. My pulse pounded in my throat. It wasn't an explicit order to target me, but it was permission. Permission for them to do whatever they wanted as long as the problem disappeared quietly. But it wasn't the last email. Weeks later, right after I left for vacation, the tone shifted from caution to panic. "She saved copies. We need to ensure she never gets access again. Sarah, I'll disable her profile today. Helen, back up all correspondence and scrub anything connecting us. David. My chest tightened as the truth spread like poison in my veins. They hadn't just covered up misconduct. They had built a conspiracy, one that reached the very top of the department, one that Helen had willingly joined in exchange for status, one that David and Sarah spearheaded, and one that Hale unknowingly sanctioned with careless indifference. I flipped through more pages, anger burning hotter with each line. Then I found what I didn't know I was looking for. A final email, sent late at night. Anonymous sender. No signature, just one line. If she exposes this, we all go down. The timestamp matched the night before my vacation. The same night someone accessed my email. The same night files were deleted. Someone else was involved. Someone with admin-level authority. Someone the system couldn't identify. Someone who wasn't on my list. My hands trembled as I reassembled the threads in my mind. David had motive. Sarah had precision. Helen had power. Richard had negligence. But someone had oversight. Someone had access to the deeper networks. Someone who could erase trails, delete logs, and leave hidden warnings. Someone who wanted me scared, but alive. A whistleblower inside the conspiracy? Or an opportunist playing both sides? My head spun. I stuffed the emails back into the folder and tucked it under my arm. As I stood, a sudden noise echoed through the basement. The soft click of a door shutting somewhere down the hallway. Someone was here, watching, listening. I killed the light inside the aisle and pressed myself against the shelf. Footsteps crunched softly on the concrete floor. Slow, deliberate, too controlled to be random. They were searching for me. I held my breath as the steps approached the aisle entrance. A shadow stretched across the floor, long and thin. My fingers curled tightly around the folder. If they caught me here, if they realized what I'd found, I had no doubt what would happen. But the footsteps paused, just meters away. Silence. Then slowly they receded. When I finally released my breath, my whole body trembled violently. I had enough evidence to destroy all of them. But they weren't going to let me walk out quietly. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a hunt. And I was no longer prey-willing to stand still. I didn't go back upstairs. Not yet. The folder pressed against my ribs felt radioactive, too powerful to carry openly. Every instinct screamed that the moment I stepped into the main floor, someone would try to intercept me. Someone would smile that brittle HR smile, pretend to lead me to a meeting, and quietly make sure neither I nor the evidence left the building. I wasn't giving them that chance. I slipped out the emergency exit into the parking lot, the early morning air cold against my skin. My hands shook as I unlocked my car, shoved the folder under the passenger seat, and sat behind the wheel with the engine off. I needed a plan. Not panic. A plan. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You've gone too far. No name. No threat spelled out. But the implication was clear. They knew I had found something. They were watching the moment I left the building. My chest tightened, but this time not with fear, with resolve. I drove straight to the one place where their influence couldn't smother me, the top floor, the executive suite, Richard Hale's office. If the CEO had unknowingly allowed this cancer to grow under him, he needed to see it now. Before they spun another lie, before they hit another record, before they neutralized me permanently. The elevator ride felt endless. My pulse thudded against my throat in heavy, slow beats. When the doors slid open, I stepped into a corridor so quiet it felt like a vacuum. The carpet swallowed my footsteps. The walls shimmered with framed awards. Everything was polished and sterile. I approached Richard Hale's office. His assistant looked up, startled. "Emily, what are you—" "I need to see him, now." Her eyes darted to my badge. "You don't have access anymore." "I'm not asking for access," I said. "I'm asking for 5 minutes." Something in my voice must have convinced her, because she hesitated, then stood. "Let me check." She disappeared behind the tall frosted glass door. Muffled voices murmured inside. The seconds dragged like wet sand. Finally, she re-emerged. "He'll see you." Relief washed through me, but it was thin and shaky. I stepped inside, unsure whether I was walking into salvation or a trap. Richard Hale sat behind his desk, sleeves rolled up, glasses perched low on his nose. He looked up slowly, assessing me with an expression I couldn't read. "Emily," he said, "I heard there were complications." "Complications," I repeated, my voice hollow. "That's one word for it." He gestured to the chair. "Sit." I didn't. Instead, I pulled the folder from my bag and placed it on his desk. The papers inside shifted, revealing the damning email headers. He frowned. "What is this?" "Everything," I said quietly. "Everything your department buried." His eyes flicked over the first page. His expression tightened, the lines around his mouth sharpening. "These are internal communications," he said slowly. "Yes. You shouldn't have access to these." "No," I agreed, but someone made sure I lost access to everything else. He leaned back, studying me. "Explain." So I did. I told him about the discrepancies I uncovered, the June report, the sudden shutdown of my access, the mysterious deletion logs, Helen's involvement, Sarah's edits, David's attempted cover-up, the anonymous warnings, and finally, the photograph taken of me without my knowledge. Richard didn't interrupt, not once. His fingers steepled beneath his chin, face unreadable. When I finished, he exhaled through his nose, a slow, heavy breath. "This is serious." "I know." He flipped through more pages. As he scanned the threads implicating David, Sarah, and Helen, his face darkened. Finally, he spoke. "If this is authentic, this is grounds for immediate termination and criminal investigation." "It is authentic," I said firmly. "I checked the metadata myself." He nodded once, sharp, decisive. "Leave this with me," he said. "I'll initiate an internal audit and an external review, effective immediately." I expected relief, triumph, something. Instead, anxiety tightened in my stomach. "Richard," I said carefully, "they know I'm digging. They know I have evidence. They threatened me. Twice." His expression shifted, concern replacing calculation. "You're not safe here." "I know." He stood, grabbed his phone, and began dialing. "I'll handle this. But you need to leave the building. Go home. Do not speak to anyone in the department. I'll contact you when the audit begins." For a moment, I was speechless. He wasn't involved. He hadn't known. His negligence helped them thrive, but he wasn't one of them. And now that he did know, he wasn't protecting them. He was protecting me. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded once. "Get somewhere safe." I turned to leave, but halfway to the door, something shifted inside me. A realization. A final piece of the puzzle snapping into place. Someone had been helping me, leaving clues, leaving access points, leaving warnings. Someone high level, high enough to slip into my profile and override system locks. Someone who knew how deep the conspiracy ran. Someone who wanted the truth out. "Richard," I said slowly, turning back to him, "did you access my profile yesterday?" He looked confused. "No. Why would I?" My pulse skipped. Then it wasn't him. The unknown override wasn't the CEO. So who was it? Richard stepped closer. Emily, what is it? I swallowed hard. There's someone else involved. Someone who wanted to help. Someone they don't know about. His brow furrowed. A whistleblower? Maybe. Or someone with their own agenda. What kind of agenda? I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure. Revenge, exposure, self-preservation, all three? Richard placed a hand on my shoulder. Let me deal with the ones we can prove. The rest will surface. I nodded, though unease churned in my gut. As I left his office, the assistant gave me a quick, strained smile. I forced one back, walked to the elevator, and pressed the button. The doors slid open. Inside, 2 people stood waiting. David Lawson and Sarah Green. My blood turned to ice. David's smile was small and poisonous. Sarah's eyes flicked to the folder in my hands. She didn't know I'd already given the evidence to Hale. Well, David said softly, look who's still here. I stepped inside anyway. The doors closed behind me. For the first time since this began, I didn't feel fear. I felt victory, because the truth was already above them, and they didn't know it. The elevator ride with David and Sarah lasted only seconds, but it felt like standing inside a pressure chamber. David hovered too close, his cologne sharp and sour, while Sarah watched me with thinly veiled hostility, as if she were already calculating the damage control she'd need once I was gone. But the moment the doors opened, I stepped out without looking back. For the first time in weeks, my pulse wasn't frantic. It was steady, controlled. Their time was running out, and they didn't even know it. I walked straight out of the building, the sun warming my face as if the world outside had no idea I'd just crawled out of an internal battlefield. I drove home, parked, locked my door twice, and waited. The first email came at 11:43 a.m. from Richard Hale. Subject, immediate action required. Emily, please pick up your phone. This is urgent. My hands trembled as I dialed him. He answered on the first ring. It's done, he said without greeting. I convened a rapid executive review. The evidence you gave me is overwhelming. What happened? I whispered, bracing myself. I placed David, Sarah, and Helen on immediate administrative leave, he said. Security escorted them out. A shiver ran through me, not fear, but something deeper. A release, a vindication. And the investigation? I asked. It's in motion. Our legal team is preparing the formal filings. External auditors are en route. This goes beyond internal misconduct. The authorities will be involved. A breath I didn't know I'd been holding broke free. They tried to destroy your career, he added, voice tightening. I won't allow that. After we hung up, I collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted, shaking, but alive. My phone buzzed again and again as the day unfolded. By early afternoon, rumors surged across the company like wildfire. Messages poured into my personal email, coworkers apologizing, others shocked, some admitting they suspected something but were too afraid to speak up. I didn't blame them. Not anymore. I had seen fear up close. I had lived it. At 3:17 p.m., I received another email. This one from internal comms, addressed to the entire company. Effective immediately, David Lawson, Sarah Green, and Helen Brooks have been removed from duty pending the results of a formal investigation into financial misconduct and abuse of authority. It felt surreal reading their names in a company-wide announcement, knowing I'd been one step from being erased entirely because of them. I should have felt triumphant. I should have wanted to celebrate. Instead, I felt hollow, because somewhere in the shadows, there was still one person unaccounted for, the one who'd helped me, the one who left warnings, the one who accessed my profile as unknown. Were they protecting me, or using me to topple their enemies? I didn't know, but I would find out. Late that evening, Richard called again. "I want to offer you something," he said. "Something overdue." I frowned. "What?" "A promotion. Department head. Effective as soon as the investigation concludes." Shock hit me so hard I forgot how to speak. "You were the only person who did the right thing," he continued. "Everyone else looked away. You didn't." My eyes stung. "Richard, I don't know what to say. Say you'll consider it, and say you'll come back when you're ready. I'll personally make sure no one ever targets you again." After we hung up, I stared at the ceiling for a long time, letting the weight of his words settle. Head of the department. The same department that tried to bury me. The irony wasn't lost on me. A week later, I returned to the office, not as a ghost haunting the halls, not as a threat to be purged, but as someone walking willingly back into the place that tried to expel her. People stepped aside as I passed. Their expressions were uneasy, stunned, apologetic. No one looked through me now. No one ignored me. No one whispered behind my back. Some approached with soft voices. "I'm sorry, Emily. I should have said something. I didn't know what they were doing." I nodded, accepting each apology without judgment. Fear had trapped them. I understood now. When I reached my old workspace, the desk had been cleaned, reset, restored. My nameplate gleamed. My chair waited. But this wasn't where I belonged anymore. Richard met me near the windowed corner office, the one that had once belonged to Marcus, the one with the view. "You sure you're ready?" he asked. I stepped inside. Sunlight spilled across the room. The city spread out below me in a wash of golden glass. "I am," I said. He nodded and left me alone. I walked toward the desk, tracing my hand along its polished edge. The surface reflected my face, tired but unbroken. My laptop was already connected. My new badge, silver instead of blue, lay beside it. I sat down slowly. For a long moment, I let the silence settle around me. Not the hostile, suffocating silence I returned to after vacation. This silence felt like reclamation, like justice. On the far wall, a framed quote hung neatly. "Integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching." I almost laughed. Someone had been watching. But it hadn't stopped me. My computer chimed as it finished loading. New credentials, new access, full control of the department I had defended alone. I leaned back in my chair, the quiet humming of the office drifting through the glass walls. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about striking back. It was about surviving long enough to let the truth speak louder than anything else. And now, the truth was finally louder than them all.